So we'll start. Good evening, everybody who has joined. We've been overwhelmed by the kind of interest we are seeing in the fellowship. So today will be the first information webinar which we do. Um, the idea of the webinar is that we'll introduce people to what Govtech is. Not everybody here will be very familiar with the kind of technology that the government uses. We'll introduce the organization, the fellowship, the timelines and structure of this fellowship, the mentors for the summer, and then in the end, we'll also take up some Q&A. I just wanted to confirm with the team whether am I audible properly right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the agenda for the day. We'll try to finish the presentation in an hour. We have some case studies and examples of GovTech, etc. And then in the end, we'll take some Q&A. On the bottom right, you can ask questions. On the bottom right, you'll see a triangle and a square and a circle. And you can click that and go to questions and you can ask a question. And if you're not able to ask the question, you can put it in the chat. The team is listening and they should be able to help you with that. So let's begin. So what is GovTech, right? What is this fellowship about? All of us are, some of you are from design background, some of you are from tech, some of you are from cybersecurity and GIS. Most of us in our day-to-day life use some of the other technology platforms, right? Which are largely built by the private sector, but also more increasingly, many of you would have directly interacted with a bunch of technology which the government has also created. But what is generally GovTech? To a normal, typical citizen, a lot of what the government uses technology for might be invisible. And so we'll try to sort of highlight the field to you first.
Harsh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. We need to confirm it from the audience if they are able to hear you. I can see some people have written they're not able to hear you.
Can people who are able to hear me from the audience put it in the chat?
Can you put a yes? All right. Okay, we can proceed. Thank you.
Maybe it is the viewers
Yeah.
who are not able to see it. So if they are the viewers who are not able to hear, maybe you can make them contributors again. So that's fine. So what is GovTech? This is a very interesting quote which we come back to from time to time. But everything which we see around us, like if you are walking out and you're walking on the road, you're seeing buses going on, you're using the railway station, the fact that you're getting electricity at home right now, that the fact that you're able to use the internet, a lot of it right now has been somebody's passion project. And a lot of times, a lot of these ambitious projects which we see around you have government playing a role in them, whether you take the most ambitious of those projects, whether it is landing on the dark side of the moon, but also just making sure that everybody in a city is able to get piped water or electricity on time. All of these are extremely complex projects which the public sector or the government partners with the private sector and does them together. So let's take an example. Let's say there is this habitation in rural India which does not have a road. At the start of 2000s, the government found that there were roughly 1,75,000 such habitations which did not have an all-weather road. An all-weather road is like a bitumen road, a black tar road as compared to like a muddy road. So the government had launched a program called PMGSY, which is Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, to make sure that these 1,75,000 habitations are able to get an all-weather road. Now, what does it take to really get this done, right? You need to find these habitations, right? Which are these 1,75,000 habitations? India is a massive country, right? And if you go from the north to south, east to west, how do you find where these habitations are? What are their populations, etc.? Once you identify, you have to find a way to prioritize them, right? You cannot build as many roads in a year. As a fact, it took more than 20 years to get those number of habitations get a road, right? So how do you prioritize them? Which one will get built first? How do you allocate money to state departments, right? The central government works with the state departments. The state departments work with district level, block level officers to get this done. So how do you do that coordination? How do you allocate money? Once a road has been identified that it needs to be built, you need to create designs, you need to figure out estimates, how much will it cost to do it. You need a mechanism to check whether these estimates are correct or not, whether the designs are good or not, right? And otherwise you find out roads which go to nowhere or the roads which have been poorly built. You need a mechanism to bid these roads out, right? So the government oftentimes uh, collaborates with contractors, private contractors who are actually building the road. So you put out a bid and people bid for it, and whoever would do it in at a low cost manner with higher quality gets to do the road, right? So how do you figure out that? How do you bid it out in a transparent manner? Once someone has been awarded, how do you measure the work, whether the work is being done in quality? You need to pay them for the work which they are doing. The headquarters, the state headquarter and the headquarter in Delhi has to monitor at an aggregate level how many habitations have been completed, not completed, why is there a delay. um, Once the road has been built, they need to be maintained. Engineers need to inspect the road. Citizens should have a way to complain. So just the idea of building a road has so much in terms of operations which the government has to do, right? And each of these operations has a digital system behind them, right? It is impossible to do this. Once you think about it, it's impossible to do this without any kind of IT system, right? If you think of a private sector company, you might be able to use Blinkit or Zomato by just looking at the consumer level app, right? But there's this whole world of IT systems which are behind that app, which make it happen, right? So similarly here, everything which I spoke about previously has a digital system which is helping you do it in a more responsible, resilient, and a transparent manner, right? So payments to contractors are done digitally directly into their bank accounts. There are GIS algorithms which are planning which roads should be built, not built. There are tools in which every alignment is drawn and vetted whether they are actually being built to the places which they are being proposed to be built at. There are systems to pay for road maintenance to check whether the road has been maintained or not. There are algorithms which are being run to figure out whether the costs are correct or something strange or anomalous is happening. There are citizen apps. So all of this are real existing systems which go into making sure that every village gets a road, right? That is the objective, but it takes all of this to get it done. So GovTech, in a sense, is the government's back office operation, right? The things which we see every day, the roads, the utilities, everything requires a lot of this system which we don't get to see as normal citizens. And these are the digital systems. They could be mobile apps, GIS tools, dashboards, algorithms. Take any kind of digital system, most of them is powering in some way or the other these back offices. They're very boring systems if you think about it. They're invisible, but these are the systems which make the government deliver the services it wants to deliver, right? Building roads for 175,000 villages is not a joke. And it requires a lot of these digital systems which make it happen. I'm going to pause here to just quickly get a sense of whether people are able to hear. I'll ask the team to quickly check on the chat whether people are able to hear. And if it's the viewers who are not able to hear, you can make them the contributor again. Richa, Sabita, everything's good?
Yeah, we added people to contributors. They should be able to hear now. Everyone.
Okay. Right. So just keep monitoring the chat also. So GovTech is the government's back office, right? But government also has a front office, right? There are these systems uh, which we are able to see also, right? So the government directly also creates digital systems which you and I have interacted with, whether it is Passport Seva Kendra, which is a phygital system which is largely powered by a digital system at its core and a bunch of physical processes, right? So these are systems. It's not that a single IT application is going to change anything. These are systems. So you have Passport Seva Kendra, you have the income tax portal, you have emergency response, right? The fact that if you ever unfortunately are in an emergency and you would call 112, there is a chain of IT systems which get called from understanding where your location is, then assigning that ticket to the correct jurisdiction, to the correct police patrol vehicle, the police patrol vehicle accepting that ticket, coming to you, making sure that the ticket has been completed, not completed, etc. All of it has an IT system. Then there is Umang, which is an app made by the government of India, which you can download, and it acts like a super app in which you get access to more than 100 other government services from a single app. instead of downloading 100 different mobile apps. Then there's e-challan. Whenever you have, say, broken a traffic rule, you would have gotten an SMS that you have to pay this challan, right? So from you breaking a rule to getting automatically detected that you've broken a rule, and a series of steps which happen before you get a challan, all of that is also an example of GovTech. Then there are the most recent iteration of GovTech, which are the DPIs and DPGs, which are digital public infrastructures and digital public goods. These many of you have used, and even in the applications which we've received right now, a lot of you have mentioned DigiLogger to be one of your GovTech applications of interest. So these are building blocks which government, but not always, sometimes the government, sometimes the private sector, builds as shared layers. These are sort of stacks, APIs, or design systems which are reused or built upon by the government or the private sector to solve a public problem. So these are DPIs and DPGs. So now coming to the fellowship. Build for Bharat is a paid 2.5-month fellowship which will happen this summer to identify and equip the next generation of public technologists that use their technical skills for public good, right? So these are the kind of public systems which we spoke about. They require technologists of a certain kind, right? Technologists which are not just good at their job, who are great engineers or designers or GIS specialists, but they understand the complexities of what it takes to solve such big problems, right? Any big problem worth solving for typically is a complex problem statement. Government comes with its own quirks. You're working with a diverse population. You're working across the scale of the country. So not only do you need to be exceptionally good at your technical skills, but you need to have the right mindset and the right public values to be able to be called a good public technologist. And so the fellowship is to identify and equip such people. Who are we? We are Bharat Digital. We are a non-profit organization which has been started by technologists and designers with decades of experience of working in the government and in the industry. Right? So we are a non-profit organization with people who have worked in the industry and in the government, building some of the systems which we are going to talk about, or which we talk about typically. Our goal of the organization is to modernize and humanize how governments design, develop, and deploy technology in service of the public. So how do you modernize the technology which is being used, which is being deployed by the government? How do you humanize it? How do you design them in such a manner that it works for everybody? We partner with government agencies and community organizations in pursuit of this goal. So what are the components of this fellowship, which is being offered by Bharat Digital? There are three components which are part of the fellowship. The first is orientation. Every fellow which will get selected will undergo a specially curated orientation or a training program at the start of the fellowship and throughout the fellowship via talks. So there will be a program when we all get together and we will be introduced to the field of public technology, right? It'll be like a crash course to understanding how the government uses technology. When does it work? When does it not work? How do you make sure it works? It's resilient, it's scalable. What has been the history of it? What is the direction in which we are going, to make you rounded as a public technologist? And there's deputation. We would partner you with a government agency. So we have partnered with government agencies who are going to solve certain GovTech problem statements. Fellows will be matched with these government departments, and you will be spending your summer at that government agency working on a scoped problem statement, which is solving a real world problem within the government. And throughout the internship or throughout the fellowship, you will have expert mentorship. So not only would you be matched with a champion inside the government, which will be your day to day, but you would also have access to exclusive mentorship hours from industry leaders in engineering, design, data, cybersecurity, and all the tracks which we have. And in the presentation ahead, we'll talk about which of these are the mentors which we have. A quick check on the orientation. Our number one goal of the entire fellowship is to create public technologists who get a taste of what it means to work on public problems. And that is why we are doing this, to give you the experience and the training to do that before you start with your careers. Richa?
Yeah, so the program is structured like this. Like Harsh said, this is a 2.5 months fellowship, which will run from May to July. When you're filling your application forms, we've given you two choices on the dates. The fellows are going to primarily work from the offices of our partner government departments. The stipend that you will get for this fellowship is 40,000 per month, and the location will depend on the project and preference that you give us in the application, but a final call will be taken by the team. So these are the fellowship tracks. When you will be filling your application forms, there are 6 tracks that the fellowship operates in. You have data, which comprises of data analytics, AI/ML, and the data visualization. We also have engineering track, where you can apply for a full stack or a front end or a back end engineering. Then you have design also, where which comprises of UI, UX, visual design, information design, communication design. Then we also have cybersecurity as a track, which comprises of risk and security or cybersecurity engineering. We also have product as a track, where you'll be required to work on specific products, user research, and product management. Then we also have the 6th track is GIS, where you'll be working with remote sensing, satellite imagery, and also some GIS infrastructure planning projects. These are typically the type of projects that you will be involved in. The tracks that I just mentioned, these are some of the examples of the projects that these tracks will have. So for example, you can employ AI and ML to reduce the paperwork and automate systems. Then the user research track might have field works and the research to improve the frontline UX of these government systems. You might also have to work with redesigning the government forms to make them more inclusive, to make them more accessible. Then you might be required to work on improving the security systems of these IT applications in the government. The other example is improving the incident response systems. And the 6th example is the infrastructure planning with GIS. Yeah, so you are eligible for this fellowship if you are graduating in either 2025 or 2026. And we are accepting applications on all academic levels, undergraduate, master's, PhD students, and you have to be an Indian national to apply for this fellowship. All right. So I also want to give you some pointers on whether this fellowship will align to your interests or not. So if you are someone who loves digging deeper into not just why things work, but also why they don't, then this fellowship might be of interest to you. If the idea of navigating complexity that comes along with working with a real world project, if that is something that excites you, then this fellowship might be for you. Also, from our past experience, if you are already interested in social good projects, if you're already have been a part of social good projects, or you've volunteered for a good cause in the past, then you might find this fellowship aligned to your interests. The other things that will make you a good fit for this fellowship is if you look at constraints as not problems or as blockers, but you accept constraints as part of the problem itself. If you look at constraints as design challenges to work around them and find solutions. Second is if you're patient enough to appreciate that change takes time. So during this 2.5-month fellowship, whatever you work on will just be a piece of the puzzle. You will have to understand that this is part of a bigger continuous effort that people in the government offices do on a daily basis to make government work for everyone. Next slide, please. Yeah. The last thing I do want to mention is that this fellowship is not going to be working in isolation. So you'll be interacting with the staff at these government offices, and so there will be times when you might feel that things are a little ambiguous. But if you think you are self-driven and resilient, then you will be a good fit for the fellowship. Also, it is important to be humble, respectful of the people in the system more experienced than you are, even if they don't speak your language of tech and code.
So these are our mentors for the summer as of now. There are more mentors which are getting announced. So for the scalable systems, distributed systems, and open source track, we have Kailash, who's the CTO of Zerodha and is extremely passionate about open source and has a bunch of these initiatives which go into that. For public data information visualization, we have Rukmini. Rukmini is more recently known as the author for Whole Numbers and Half Truths, which is a book on how public data tells a story which helps us understand how India is and where it stands. More recently, she started her own organization, and before that, has been a distinguished data journalist in the country. For the GIS track, we have Ujjwal. Ujjwal now runs an organization called Spatial Thoughts, which has the mission of making sure that people are able to use open source GIS, whether it is QGIS, Google Earth, etc., to solve problems. Before that, he used to work as a staff scientist at Google Earth. So we have other mentors which we are confirming, and I would ask each of you to follow us on the socials which we have shared so that you are able to get to know who the other mentors are. Throughout the fellowship, you will get access to office hours with the mentors and the core team to help you navigate this system, to help you understand the tech projects which you're dealing with, and if you have any other kinds of mentorship requirements. Now, what are the learning outcomes? As a fellow, what can you expect to be your takeaway after this? So, as I said earlier, these are very important problems of public technology which sort of run the system around us. The idea is to equip public technologists, future next generation public technologists who will solve these problems and want to work on these problems. So one of the first learning outcomes is that we would orient you to this field. We would introduce you to the field. We'll catch you up on what has happened over the last couple of years and give you a sense and a taste of the challenge and the impact which you can gain in public technology. You'll get an insight onto how government actually functions. Very few people have an understanding of what it takes to run large scale complex systems, and you'll get a small insight into how that works. You'll be working on a real world system, right? You'll be working on real world systems where the systems which you help improve might improve the lives of thousands, if not millions of people. You will get access to technical mentorship from the experts which we spoke about. You would also be part of a cohort, right? So this is going to be a highly selective pool of fellows, and we will curate a very cohort-based experience for all of you. So some of you might be in agency A, some of you might be in a department B, and some of you might be hosted in a department C. But we would try to create a cohort-based experience in which you get to know each other throughout the month also. So these are some of the timelines. As most of you know, the deadline is 7th March. 7th March midnight is by when you have to apply on the There is an application form which you can find on our website. The process will be such that once you have cleared the desk round, you will go through technical interviews by experts in your respective fields. After the technical interviews, there might be partner calls in case you are being deputed to a certain government organization who wants to have a call with you before you are selected. We are expecting by the first week of April that we would be able to announce the fellows, but the response has been overwhelming. But this is the timeline which we are trying to reach. May 1st week is when you would have your orientation, and May 2nd week is when most likely the internship would begin, in which you would be positioned at the partner organizations. As I said, the deadline is 7th March. A quick brief about the application. A lot of you have already filled it. A lot of you have not yet filled it. So a brief on the application form, it's broken down into three parts. The first part is basic information, which is college, fellowship track, what are you applying for, where are you from, what are the languages which you speak. The second is your technical experience. We want people who already have some technical experience to show off. It could be your personal projects, academic projects, a portfolio, or whatever. But this fellowship is strictly for people who have some technical experience, right? These are important systems which you would want to work on. And we expect that the fellows who are joining have some sort of technical experience or design experience to show off. So that is the second part of the application. The third part of the application is your motivation. As we earlier said, that public technologists are not just people who are highly good at the skills which they possess, have a certain kind of mindset and certain values, right? So the motivation part of the section, there are a few long essay questions which you have to apply. I would seriously recommend not to use any LLMs, Chat GPT, Gemini, whatever, to write these answers. This will not reflect nicely on your application. We want to know you. And if knowing you means that you write in a manner which is personal to you, and we get to know you for who you are, right? So don't submit essay questions which are very clearly not reflective of your own self, but of a large language model. So before we proceed to the GovTech case studies, I just wanted to make another point very clear, that the program is open to both bachelors, not just both, bachelors, masters, or even PhDs. The only eligibility is that you have to be a student who has either recently graduated, that is in 2025, that you're going to graduate right now, and this would be the summer after you graduate, or this is the summer before you graduate, which is that you are graduating next year, right? So that is the only eligibility. Otherwise, we are getting a lot of interest from master students, some interest from PhD students. I just want to make it very clear that it is open to all kinds of programs. And even within bachelor's, master's, and PhD, you don't have to be from a particular specialization, right? As long as you are able to demonstrate the skills for the track which you are applying to, right? Whether you're applying for cybersecurity, whether you're applying for engineering, design, etc. If you're able to demonstrate that you have the skill set in that particular track, then you can apply. These tracks are not an option of what do you want to learn, that you don't know any cybersecurity and you want to learn cybersecurity. The tracks are tracks where you have technical experience and you want to further apply those skills and learn more about those skills. So we'll cover some GovTech case studies. This is again only to give you an idea about what kind of technology does the government use. This is not representative of the projects which you will get. As I said, the projects have not been finalized. The projects will get finalized and matched after you've been selected. But to give you a taste of what kind of GovTech projects are there. This is based on public information. We are not claiming that Bharat Digital has had any organizational role in these projects. Richa?
Yeah, so before explaining the first case study, I want to give you all a very quick introduction to the largest social welfare program of India called NREGA. So NREGA is a program under which people in rural India can get wage employment by building infrastructure assets in their own village. So the objective of the program is twofold, providing employment to the poorest of the poor section of the society, but in the process build assets like farm ponds, roads, wells for the development of village itself. To give you a sense of the scale that the scheme operates on, I want to show you some numbers. So there are about 8 crore workers that work under this scheme every year, and 70% of those workers are women. The budget for this program alone in the scheme budget that was announced for 24-25 was 86,000 crore. So you can imagine the scale that the program is operating on. Yeah, so the team at the ministry thought of getting a user research conducted to understand if there are any operational challenges faced by the workers on ground. There was a product team that was set up, there was a PM, there was a user researcher, a designer, and a full stack engineer. Um, when the user research was carried out, there were a lot of things that they uncovered, but the key finding was that a worker a lot of times struggles to know if her attendance has been marked for the day or not, and if her payment has been credited to the bank account or not. And I want to remind you that we are talking about the underprivileged rural section of the society. The era of internet banking has still not arrived for them. And so the user research that the team did, it also highlighted that these people, these workers who are working under NREGA, they have to make multiple bank visits just to get to know their payment status, because the bank branches are not also in the same village. They are far away. They have to walk multiple kilometers. And because these bank branches are also in the remote locations, they also suffer from power outages. They also suffer from network failures or cash shortages. And so the worker is making multiple visits to the bank. The other thing that the research uncovered was that even though some of this information, the payment information, is already available on NREGA's website, there are accessibility and illiteracy barriers. And all of this is eroding the trust of the citizen in the scheme. Yeah, can you play the video? And so you can see a video, a screen recording of the app. But basically, the product manager scoped a mobile app for the low literate user group, which would simply allow them to either type or speak their job card number. The job card number is the unique ID of the worker, and it would simply give them their attendance status and if their payment has arrived or not, how much they have been paid, or it has been credited to which bank account. So on design, because the team was developing this mobile for the low literacy group, there was a lot of design iterations that happened. The designs on the Figma was made. There were usability studies that were conducted with the actual users. All of that happened. And finally, the full stack developer on the team then built the app with all these features. And the app was made inclusive with all the official languages of India. And there were, accessibility features in it too. For example, if someone does not know how to read, they can also just choose to hear the information.
So that's an example of a project which is a mixture of product, management, design, and even engineering. This is another example of a project which is the use of AI and drones for highway monitoring by NHAI. So I'm going to play a quick video. You might not be able to hear it, but the larger idea of the project, as per the information available, is that India has about roughly 140,000 kilometers of highway, and monitoring them at scale is a difficult process. You would have to go through each highway every month to figure out what are the issues faced by them. So National Highway Authority of India deploys drones which go through the highways on a monthly basis. Now, these drones are not just capturing the video, they take photographs at 90-degree angle at a high frequency, which are then converted into 3D models of the highway, on which then machine learning models are applied, right? So instead of just applying machine learning models on the RGB values, you get a depth value and then you apply machine learning on it. And then that is used to identify things like potholes, cracks on the road, whether there are illegal median openings, which people have broken up, counting the number of trees, road safety features, etc. Right? And whether you want to see how the highway was a month ago, not month ago, and convert reports into it. So this is a great example of a project which is in the intersection of machine learning, of GIS, of even product engineering, right? Because the way in which all of this happens and the interface which you are able to see would have been very carefully designed so that it is usable to people in an intuitive manner, right? So this is another example. Then there are even not very advanced machine learning algorithms, but data visualizations and analytics. Let's say you have to figure out whether roads, in the earlier example, right? The first example which we went through, you want to figure out which of the road proposals are anomalous, they are of high cost, or they are not in a good design, right? So you can compare it with similar proposals from similar areas before and figure out whether this particular road is standing out or not. Very simple, but here the key is to figure out the right kind of design, the right kind of data visualizations to use, and figuring out what is it that needs to be done to get the action, right? Simple interventions which have hundreds and thousands of crores of implication at the scale at which the government operates. Then you can use GIS to identify disparities as well. There are certain, all of you in your lived experience have lived in more than one city, or you've been in a village, you've then come to a city. You have been in more than one location, and no two locations are the same kind of facilities and amenities, right? Certain places are more developed, certain places are less developed. And how can you then identify these places, right? At India scale, for example, there are more than 6 lakh villages, right? How do you identify which villages are more developed and which villages are less developed so that you can focus your attention there? A recent thing which the government has been doing is that it geotags everything it does, right? So if a toilet has been built by the government, they would geotag the toilet. They'll click a geotag picture, so you'll have the location and the photograph. If pipelines have been built, or if roads have been built, anything which the government does has now almost a geotagging angle aspect to it, right? So if you use that GIS information, you take the village boundaries of India, and then you do a buffer and a subtraction, you can at scale figure out which villages are there where there are no assets, right? So if green dots are assets in the left image, you can do a buffer and figure out the villages which don't have any asset, right? So you can see people are living, but let's say hypothetically the green dot is a toilet, that the no government toilet has been built in this village. Now it could mean many things. It doesn't mean that there has been less work there. It could be that the work has happened but has not been geotagged, or that there is no requirement, etc. But it sort of shortlists your attention span. Instead of looking at 6 lakh villages, now you can focus on a few of these which have been identified and figure out whether what is the concern there. So these are some examples. Again, I want to repeat, these are not the projects which you will work on. These are just examples of projects for which information is available, and which you can also look into, and to give you a sense of the kind of technology which the government uses, or kinds of projects which similar kind of projects which you can work on. So these are some of our socials. I would recommend following them if you want to stay tuned with other updates which would be coming up, whether we are announcing new mentors, whether there are changes in any kind of deadlines, etc. So you can follow these. Some of you have reached out and they are not eligible. Either you are already a working professional who is very interested in the kind of work which we are doing, or you are a student who's not graduating now or in the next year, but is still maybe in their second year or first year of college for a 4-year program. And if you want to volunteer for this, you can reach out to us, and you can drop in a message with your CV, and we can figure out how you can help us in this mission. And now we'll take up a few questions. I'm going to, the team has identified certain questions, and I'll go. One of the first questions which is coming is whether this is sponsored by the government and whether this is a government entity. We are not a government entity, right? Bharat Digital is a non-profit organization which a few of us have started, which has partnered with government agencies where you will work on, right? So you will be on the role of Bharat Digital. Your stipend will come from Bharat Digital, but you would be deputed to our partner organizations who have agreed to receive a fellow to work on projects with them during the summer. I'll just go through.
I can sum up. Harsh, one of the questions is, while working on the project, will someone assist you, or in terms of cybersecurity?
Right. So I'll give you an example, and which is not specific to just cybersecurity. Let's say you have been given a project. You will be embedded in an existing government technology team, right? So you will be with people who are building those projects, and you will be supporting them for the project which has been used. So you'll not be left alone, neither would you because that is not how things operate, and you would not be able to work on these systems. So you'll be part of a government team in which you'll be embedded. So you will not only have a project champion inside the government who will mentor you, who will be technical, and he will help you with your project which they have selected for you, but you will also have access to mentorship from the back office, which is our team and the mentors which are there for this summer, this inaugural summer.
Got it. Thank you. So, bunch of people have questions where they're saying, I've done some good projects in the field of GIS. You do some changes in interest and personal reasons. I want to work in data related field. So, can I apply to AI ML related roles, or is there a way I can combine both of them? Also, a bunch of people have questions. Can they contribute to like two domains or like do some intersection related work?
So you have to select one track, right? And so there are 6 tracks. You have to select one track. The track has to be the skill which you are most proficient in, the skill which you're most confident in, the one which you think you can deliver. As you can imagine, most of these projects have intersection, right? So in the application form, you have to select a track, which is just one track out of 6. But there is also another question where you can select 3 skills, right? So for one example, someone has mentioned that they're great at machine learning, but they're also interested in remote sensing, or the other way around, right? So typically, a lot of these projects have a lot of intersection. A lot of remote sensing projects are projects of machine learning, or a lot of machine learning projects have a GIS component to them. So I would say select a track which you think you are confident in. And then in the additional skill sets, you can mention the additional skill sets that you have. And that helps us match you with projects, right? So if you're a machine learning engineer with remote sensing skills, if there is a machine learning project which requires GIS expertise, then we can match you with that project. So pick something which you are interested in, you want to move in that direction and you're confident in it. And then remaining, you can add it in the skills. But you have to select one track. Also, most of you would go as a group, right? So if there are n number of fellows which are selected, you will not be sent alone to a particular government department. You'll be sent as a unit. So you might be tagged with another machine learning engineer, and the 2 of you or the 3 of you might be sent to a particular department, so that you have each other's company and expertise also, obviously, while you're part of a larger team at the agency which you have been put out.
Got it. Another
I think I've already answered that this is not sponsored by the government. Your stipend will come via Bharat Digital. Selection process is the same across. There is a desk verification, then there are industry experts who are going to interview you to check whether you have those skills or not, irrespective of the track. The interviews sometimes will be 1, 2, in which there are technical skills which will be evaluated. There's a culture fit which will be evaluated. And then for some of you, there might be a partner call. So this
one,
answers. Hmm.
yeah, one related question. A lot of people are they are saying that they have exams in May or they might be graduating by June or July. So can the dates be moved or is there a way to work around that?
So the fellowship is in the summer, between May and July, and you have to spend 2.5 months to be called. You have to commit to 2.5 months of a fellowship. When you're giving the application or submitting the form, you have to select whether you're available from the first week of May or from the second week of May. If there are people who are, or there are colleges in which the term is not ending in the first week or second week of May, please write to us directly. If these are colleges where the term is only not ending, you can also add that information in the application where we ask you whether you want to share something more. But if there are colleges where a sizable number of students are not even completing the term, I would ask you to write to us. But typically, what we are expecting based on the applications which we have received already, that majority of you seem to be okay starting in the second week of May. But the larger goal, maybe we can make an exception for 1 or 2 fellows if they're not able to start. But between May and July, you have to finish 2.5 months, because you have an orientation at the start of the fellowship, which all the selected fellows will do together. And then there is an end workshop, right, where all of us will discuss the projects we've done, and what was the impact achieved, what were our learnings, etc. So there is a start and an end. So you have to fit yourself in the middle.
Okay.
The stipend is, if it were not clear, I see a question. The stipend is 40,000 per month. Again, 40,000 per month from Bharat Digital. You will be on our rolls. And so if you complete the entire fellowship, which is expected out of you 2.5 months, that'll be 1 lakh.
Shruti is asking, in the application form, the user research role is listed under the design track, but in your presentation, it was categorized in the product track. Can you clarify what it falls in and what to choose in there?
Right. So if so you're absolutely right, and there is an intersection in them. If you are a qualitative researcher from a design background and you have done a lot of this work, uh, I would say if you have an intersection of design, Figmas, etc., you should pick the design track. At the same time, product managers also have to do user research. So if you're interested in user research, scaling products, let's say there's a government app and you want the project assigned to you is, scaling the app, prioritizing the roadmap of the app, talking to consumers, seeing what are their pain points from a perspective of increasing the usage of the government app, then you should pick the product management track. So if you are a qualitative researcher, you want to figure out unmet needs on the ground and come up with new designs or new workflows, etc., you can pick that track. Or if you're interested in scaling projects, pursuing KPIs, etc., making sure customer satisfaction is increasing from a more typical product management perspective, then I would say pick the product track. So in the case study example which we had for the app called MGNREGA, I would say the user researcher is the one who's, coming up with the evidence that there is unmet needs on the ground, which would require a digital intervention. And a product manager would be saying that this is the app which now needs to be built. How should it be built and how should it be rolled out, right? So figuring unmet needs, where maybe a system doesn't even exist, versus a system exists and then scaling it and improving customer satisfaction. So choose between that, uh, what attracts you more, which is the direction you want to go in, and what are the skill sets which you have.
Um, Thanks. Are there any prerequisite technical skills for applying in the fellowship track, especially in cybersecurity and engineering track?
Again, you should have some technical experience to prove that you have pursued these fields and you have a knowledge of that field, right? So if an engineer, you should have projects of engineering. We are asking for your GitHub links. We are okay with blog posts, research projects, etc. Something which we can see and is an evidence of whether you have those skills or not. That should be the general answer across the projects. I'm seeing another question, and I'm going to reiterate that you will be on the role of Bharat Digital, which is a non-profit organization which partners with the government. It is not in itself a government agency, but we partner with government agencies who have committed that they want talent like you, the talent which is applying to work on projects in their teams.
People are, could you also sort of reiterate how many rounds they are?
So once the application closes March 7th, a few of you will be reached out. The ones who clear the desk verification will be reached out for the first technical interview. After, if you clear the first technical interview, there'll be a short culture round to figure out whether you have the right mindset and values for this program. And then for a small percentage of you, depending on the partner organization in which you are being matched, the partner organization might want to just talk to you to see who is going to come to them, right? But that is only for some of the organizations, not all. Most of you will go through two interviews, a technical and a mindset value culture fit round.
Students are asking, can they do this internship remote or is it offline or on-site?
This is very clearly on site. You will be posted to the partner government agencies.
Are we providing reallocation facility?
So depending on the location where you are and where you are being posted, this is something which we are considering, yes.
Students are asking, is this a full-time internship or there's a placement opportunity after the fellowship?
There are no commitments of placements afterwards. This is a fellowship for spending the summer. Uh, it may lead to kinds of opportunities in the future, but very categorically, there is no commitment to that. This is a fellowship which is limited to the summer to begin with. I want to quickly go back to what is it that we are looking for, because we've received a lot of applications already. There are three components to the summer fellowship, but our larger objective is to identify and equip the next generation of public technologists, which go ahead and work on these problem statements, right? These problem statements are distributed across the country. Uh, Everything which you see around there are people working on these problem statements inside the government, outside of the government, etc. The idea is to identify and equip the next generation of these technologists by not only giving you an orientation in the beginning, but also giving you a very real world hands-on taste to what it means to work on these systems, right? That's the objective of the fellowship, and that is the kind of people which we are looking for.
There's
It's going to be a very small selective group of people which will get through the fellowship in the first year.
there's a question. Does government use old stack technology, or do they use React Next.js? What are the kind of tech stacks they're using?
I think there's a mix. I think it's a great question. There is a mix. Uh, a lot of the new government projects, which some of us have worked on, do use a lot of these new technologies. A lot of them use older technologies, right? And the idea also of this fellowship is to sort of, modernize where required. Uh, and so I would say majority of the older legacy projects, as you can imagine, the government is a big organization, right? And you can't do like a complete rewrite every time there's a new stack, right? And that it has been there for a long period of time. So a lot of these projects do come with not the most fanciest or the newest stacks, but some of the newer projects which are getting built or designed right now do follow uh, the stacks which all of us or most of you would be learning, right? And the idea is also not to be very stack oriented. The idea is to be more oriented to solving problems, right? And irrespective of what stack is being used, as engineers we all know, irrespective of the stack being used, what is more interesting is to solve the problem. Eventually there are commonalities across stacks, but I would say, yeah, it's a mix now, but depending on the problem or the project which you've been mapped with, you might uh, get an older stack or a newer stack, and that's why the matching will happen very carefully. We won't match you to a project for which you don't have any understanding of. I want to clarify that it is not just an engineering fellowship, right? Design is a huge component of the fellowship, and so it's not necessary that you should know how to code if you're applying for the PM track or for the design track, or even a lot of GIS. So it's always an added plus if you can code also while being in GIS. But for the design track and the PM track, it's not necessary that you come from a coding background or an engineering background. Um, you should be able to uh, have a portfolio to show that you have design skills. You should be able to have some experience of PMing and don't necessarily need how to code.
A bunch of students had, if they're from a commerce or management background, can they apply as well?
Again, the only eligibility is you should be graduating in 2024, or so you should be graduating in 25 or 26. I'm sorry, you should be graduating in 25 or 26, and you should have technical experience in the track which you are applying. That is it.
I also see some chats where people are not eligible, but they are working professionals, but they are still want to be associated with the initiative, you can still volunteer with us. You can write to us on our email ID. Yeah.